Hey there besties. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're continuing our recap of the manhwa, Leave Happily with My Ex's Uncle. If you're new to this series, check the description below for links to previous episodes. Lastly, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the video. It really helps our channel grow. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Chuck's heart was in turmoil as he faced Evelyn, his longtime confidant, who had just dropped a bombshell. But even if I explain everything to her, she may never come back to you, Evelyn said, watching his reaction carefully. Chuck's expression darkened. What did you say? Evelyn feigned sympathy. Because she already fell for another man. Chuck's face hardened as he glanced at the photo in Evelyn's phone. A nurse had taken it, an image of Vivi and Tristan in a hospital room. Evelyn observed him closely, a smirk forming. Chuck looks shaken, she thought. She continued, Chuck, this is the one I told you about last time. He won't speak up for that woman, will he? She pretended to be tense. He even got a VIP ward for Vivi, and they spent a night there together. Chuck clenched his jaw, his grip tightening around the photo. He was trying to suppress the storm of emotions welling inside him. Evelyn, I asked you to apologize to Vivi. Why did you show me these photos? Are you trying to say that Vivi has betrayed me? Evelyn widened her eyes in fake innocence. Chuck, I just thought you should know the truth. She may not be as artless as you thought. Chuck's patience wore thin as he recalled Tristan's words earlier. I met Miss Murray on my way to your house that day. She was injured, so I took her to the hospital. Chuck flinched. The truth? Should I thank you for it? Evelyn stammered. Chuck, He cut her off coldly. Evelyn, I'll give you one last chance to confess to Vivi how you tricked me. Don't think for a second that I'll let you come between us. I'm not a fool. Evelyn's eyes widened in shock. Chuck, how could you say that? I'm doing this for your own good. I don't want you to be deceived. Chuck scoffed, tossing her phone on the table. For my good? Just you? Where do you get the confidence to talk to me like this? He leaned in, his voice dangerously low. Do you think I'm blind? I know exactly what you're up to, Evelyn. My patience for you has run out. As he stood up to leave, Evelyn chased after him. Chuck, I was wrong. I know that. Please don't go. She clung to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. He shoved her off. Let go. Evelyn released him, panic evident in her voice. Chuck, I admit I had a motive. I did everything just to make you love me. Please forgive me. Chuck narrowed his eyes. Forgive you? Go apologize to Vivi, and I'll consider it, after I see you make up for what you did. Evelyn's expression twisted as she stepped closer, gripping his arm. But she doesn't want you anymore. She decided to cancel the engagement. She doesn't love you, even if that man never appeared. She yelled at you and even hit you. Does such a woman deserve your feelings? Chuck's voice was ice as he shook her off. Evelyn, that's enough. Shut up. I don't want to hear another word from you. Evelyn smirked. Despite his words, she could see the doubt creeping in. She now feigned sadness, tears forming in her eyes. Chuck, I love you. I'll be better than Vivi. I'll listen to you. Just give me a chance, and I'll show you how good I am. Chuck stared at her with cold amusement. So, this is what you want? Evelyn nodded eagerly. That's right. I promise you. He smirked cruelly. You don't deserve me. Evelyn froze. What? Chuck leaned in, gripping her wrist, his voice dripping with contempt. Do you think you're better than Vivi? In my heart, you don't even deserve to be her shadow. It will never be your turn, even if you try to sabotage our relationship. Stop daydreaming. He let go of her hand before walking away. Evelyn screamed in frustration. Chuck! Chuck! Seething, she gritted her teeth as she watched him leave. Vivi, you're haunting me like a ghost. How could you still have Chuck's love after walking away from him? If only you would disappear. Meanwhile, at Deep Hotel, a different conversation unfolded. Mr. Lawson. I don't have assets worth 100 million. Vivi said with a tense smile, feeling uncertain. What's wrong with this guy? She wondered. Miss Murray, take a look at the agreement before we talk, Tristan said, sliding the papers toward her. Her heart pounded as she scanned the document. This agreement is... Miss Murray, you know my family's situation is complicated, Tristan began, his voice cold and measured. You've decided to cancel the engagement with Charles, and this contract will keep things simple for both you and my family. We're offering you $100 million, all you need to do is sign. Vivi swallowed hard, lowering her gaze to the contract. This contract is... Her voice trailed off as she scanned the clauses, her breath hitching. A memory surfaced, her past life. Mrs. Lawson, I'm begging you. My love for Charles is real. He promised to marry me after I got out of prison. Mrs. Lawson had thrown a document at her with a cold sneer. Stop flattering yourself. I wouldn't even be speaking to a criminal like you if Charles weren't so obsessed. Sign the agreement if you want to marry him. Vivian had flinched at the word. Criminal. That was how they saw her. Not as a woman who had endured suffering, but as a stain on their family's name. What's in the agreement? She had asked, trying to buy time. But when she shifted, a sharp pain shot through her side. Ouch. I pulled my wound again, she had winced. It hurts. Mrs. Lawson had huffed impatiently. What else could it say? You'll get nothing after marriage. Sign it if you want to be one of us. Know your place. Vivi had let out a slow breath. They wanted her to accept humiliation, to acknowledge she was unworthy of their wealth. Without a word, she had signed. Back in the present, Tristan's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Miss Murray, are you unhappy with the price? His gaze was unreadable. Vivi let out a quiet, mocking chuckle. How could I be? It's so generous of you. I just got engaged to Charles, and already, I'm being offered such a handsome breakup compensation. Her tone sharpened. You treated me like a thief. It must be humiliating for you to even negotiate with me. Tristan's expression flickered, surprised by her words. Miss Murray, if you have concerns about the agreement, we can discuss them. No need. Vivi picked up the pen and, without hesitation, signed her name. You got what you wanted. I hope you'll keep your promise and inform my parents about the cancellation. She stood, pushing the chair back smoothly, and walked to the exit. Miss Murray, Tristan called after her, but she didn't stop. Go back after dinner. I have nothing to do with you. Don't feel obligated to entertain me, she said before leaving. Tristan ran a hand through his hair, watching her disappear. She doesn't seem to know about the shares. Did I go too far? Vivi took a taxi home. As she reached her gate, her phone rang. Miss Murray, please wait. She turned to see Tristan approaching, his expression unreadable. I signed the agreement. What else do you want? She asked flatly. Tristan hesitated. I apologize for how I handled things earlier. I went too far. Vivi arched a brow. Your sincerity is overwhelming. How could I not accept such a heartfelt apology? Her voice dripped with sarcasm. If there's nothing else, I need to go home. Miss Murray, wait. Tristan stepped closer, catching her hand. I know you're still angry, but apart from apologizing, I'd like to explain the agreement to you. Can I have a few minutes of your time? She exhaled. Fine. Speak. Tristan gestured toward a nearby restaurant. You haven't eaten, have you? Soon, cakes were placed before them. Vivi folded her arms. Mr. Lawson, let's cut to the chase. Tristan met her gaze. Miss Murray, I have to admit, the agreement was a trap. Vivi's breath caught. A trap. Tristan leaned forward slightly. I had one goal. His voice was steady, his expression unreadable. I want the 10% of Lawson Group shares that belong to you. Vivi froze, her eyes widening. What? I own 10% of the shares. Tristan Lawson leaned back in his chair, his sharp gaze fixed on Vivi. I wasn't sure if you knew about this, he admitted. To find out, I offered you $100 million in exchange. It's a large sum, but it's far from the true value of those shares. Vivi stared at him, disbelief flashing in her eyes. How could I have shares in the Lawson Group without even knowing it? Tristan's expression remained unreadable as he handed her his phone. You once saved Charles. To repay that debt, my father transferred 10% of the company's shares to you. If you married Charles, you two would have owned them together. But since the engagement is off. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. You now own them alone. Vivi's breath hitched as she read the document. And if these shares fall into the hands of your family's rivals, it would be a major blow to the Lawsons. That's why you pushed me to sign the agreement. Her grip on the phone tightened. So this is what Juliana was after in my past life. She clenched her fists. The Lawsons are always scheming. No wonder they pressured me into signing. I returned what belonged to you. You don't need to explain anything to me, she said, handing him back his phone. Tristan studied her reaction. You gave up the shares without hesitation. You really don't blame me. Vivi let out a short laugh. What's the point in blaming you? You already got what you wanted. Tristan's gaze flickered. You seem oddly calm about losing such a fortune. Of course, it stings. That's an enormous amount of money. Vivi sighed dramatically. But in exchange for my freedom, that's a fair deal. Her mind, however, raced. 10% of the Lawson Group? If I had known, I never would have signed that contract. The dividends alone could have let me live a carefree life. Tristan nodded. I see. Without another word, he took out the contract and ripped it in front of her. Vivi stared at him, momentarily speechless. I was wrong about you, he continued. You saved my nephew. You deserve those shares. But... He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. Miss Murray, I want to buy them from you. Name your price. The next morning, at the Murray residence, Vivi woke up with a pounding headache. It feels like I dreamt the whole thing. She rubbed her temples, recalling Tristan's words before he saw her off. Come to me when you've decided on a price. 10% of the shares. Tristan is serious. Should I accept the offer? She sat up, deep in thought. In her past life, she had saved Charles and his family, yet they had treated her like an outsider. Shouldn't I get some compensation? But another question loomed. What price should she set? The shares were worth a fortune based on the current market value. If she took the money, Tristan might not object, but Juliana certainly would. She needed leverage. A memory surfaced, one from a night she had been sick in her past life. She had called Charles, her body trembling from pain. Chuck, I feel awful. Please come home, she had begged. Call 911 yourself. I'm on my way to sign an important contract. I don't have time for this. She had dropped the phone, the pain unbearable. Now, as Vivi pulled open her curtains, a realization struck her. That contract. It was for a land transfer. The government later developed that area, and its value skyrocketed overnight. But at this moment in time, that land was still a rundown neighborhood in the old city. A slow smirk formed on her lips as she picked up her phone. Hello, Mr. Lawson, she said. In his office, Tristan Lawson sat beside Vivi, his expression calm yet assessing. He had expected negotiations, but her sudden interest in a seemingly insignificant piece of property caught him off guard. Miss Murray, are you sure this street interests you? Tristan asked, leaning back in his chair. Vivi tilted her head slightly, offering a knowing smile. Yes. I remember it's part of your company's assets. Tristan furrowed his brows but kept his expression neutral. It is, but it isn't worth much. Exchanging your shares for it wouldn't be a wise decision. Vivi's gaze remained steady. Thank you for the warning, but the properties here will be enough for me. Tristan studied her for a long moment before nodding. If that's your decision, we'll proceed. However, you'll need to sign a share transfer agreement. Sebastian entered, setting a stack of documents on the desk. These include the share and property transfer agreements. I've marked where you need to sign, Miss Murray. Take your time reviewing them. Vivi flipped through the pages, scanning each clause carefully before picking up the pen. Thank you. Sebastian turned to Tristan. After the contracts are signed, someone needs to take Miss Murray to the street for the transfer process and a briefing on the properties. Without looking up, Tristan replied, You'll handle it. Sebastian scowled. Why am I always the errand boy? I'm a lawyer, not your assistant, he thought. He forced a smile and handed Tristan another document. Mr. Lawson, you should go. You own the properties and know the area better than I do. Tristan considered for a moment, arms crossed. Fine. I'll go with you. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. Wait, are you serious? I was just suggesting it offhand. He paused. Wait, Does that mean I still have to go? Tristan glanced at him. You don't want to. I need to process the contracts, Sebastian argued. Then you'll have to work overtime to handle them all, Tristan replied smoothly. Sebastian froze, then forced a tense smile. I'll get the car ready. When they arrived, Vivi walked alongside Tristan and Sebastian, taking in the sight of the worn-down neighborhood. This place feels like a time capsule from decades ago, Sebastian remarked. Tristan surveyed the buildings. The monthly rent for these shops ranges between $5,000 and $30,000. After accounting for repairs and maintenance, the annual cash flow is about $9 million, considering the vacancy rate. You should open a company to manage them. His gaze settled on a particular shop. Vivi followed his line of sight. Mr. Lawson, what is it? Nothing, he said, shaking his head. I'm just surprised this place is still here. Is it special to you? Tristan's expression shifted slightly. He exhaled, his voice quieter. I used to come here a lot when I was younger. I didn't expect it to still be around after all these years. Shaking off the moment, he looked at Vivi. We've been walking for a while. Do you want to take a break? The red bean soup at that stall is pretty good. She nodded. Sure. As they stepped into the shop, Vivi noted the slight glisten in his eyes. For someone who always looks so serious, he has a sweet tooth, she mused. Just then, her foot slipped on a wet patch of floor. Before she could fall, Tristan caught her, his grip firm around her waist. Are you all right? He asked, concern in his voice. Vivi exhaled sharply. I'm fine. Their eyes met as he steadied her, his hand lingering on her arm. Sebastian, watching from the side, stifled a chuckle. Well, this is interesting. Vivi quickly stepped away from Tristan, her face warm with embarrassment. I'm sorry. I was careless, she apologized. It's my fault, the shop owner said, stepping forward. I just mopped the floor, and it's still wet. Are you all right? Before Vivi could respond, a cheerful voice interrupted. Hey, it's Tristan. Tristan turned, a rare warmth in his tone. Ella, it's been a long time. You're still as energetic as ever. Ella chuckled. That's sweet of you. Please, come in. Vivi and Sebastian exchanged glances. Sweet? Tristan? That wasn't a word they had ever associated with him. You haven't been here in ages. Ella continued as she led them inside. The usual? Red bean soup and sesame cake. Tristan smiled faintly. You still remember? Of course, I do. I always have. Sylvia observed the exchange curiously. It was rare to see Tristan so familiar with someone. They are. Ella glanced at Sylvia and the others as she served their plates. Business partners, Tristan replied, handing Vivi a hot plate. Sebastian quietly ate his soup, feeling oddly like a third wheel. Hello, Ella. My name is Sylvia Murray, Vivi introduced herself. Ella's eyes lit up. Wow, you're pretty. You must be Tristan's girlfriend. Sebastian nearly choked on his soup. What? I'm not, Vivi said quickly, her face turning red as Sebastian stifled a laugh. Tristan's expression remained calm. Ella, you've got it wrong. She's just an important business partner. Ella smiled knowingly. I see. But it's the first time you've brought someone here. You two look good together. Maybe you should consider it. Sebastian wiped his mouth. Please don't randomly pair people up. Tristan shot him a sharp look. Enough. Ella chuckled, unfazed. Anyway, you've come at the right time. I'm going to close the shop soon. Tristan's expression shifted. Why? Ella sighed with a nostalgic smile. It's been years, Tristan. I still remember when you first came here for breakfast, back when you were barely as tall as this table, with a school bag on your back. You looked adorable. Tristan listened, a rare softness in his expression. You're gonna have kids one day, right? Ella teased with a laugh, causing Vivi to turn away, flustered. Not anytime soon. I'm still single, he replied with a small smile. But why retire? You're still in good health. There aren't as many customers these days, Ella said. And even if I stayed, I wouldn't be able to keep the store open for much longer. My son graduated from college, started working, and I've paid off my mortgage. I've accomplished more than I ever dreamed by running this little shop. It's time to rest. Vivi listened closely. In her previous life, she remembered that this street had been redeveloped, forcing all the shopkeepers to relocate. Tristan's expression darkened briefly before softening. If you want, I can arrange a new shop near my company for you. Ella waved a hand dismissively. That's kind of you, but I enjoy making breakfast for kids. Seeing them eat happily keeps me going. I don't think I'd like catering to corporate workers. She smiled. Don't worry. I'm not leaving just yet. You're always welcome to visit. Vivi glanced at Tristan. Compared to the ruthless businessman she had known, this moment revealed something else. Memories tied to this place, a sentimental side he rarely showed. Later that evening, as Tristan dropped Vivi off, Sebastian finally spoke up. What's wrong with you? Do you have feelings for Sylvia? His tone was sharp. She's your nephew's ex-wife. Even if they're divorced, getting involved with her will ruin your reputation. You know all eyes have been on you since your return. Tristan kept his gaze on the road, his expression unreadable. Did I give you that impression? We're just business partners. Sebastian scoffed. She doesn't seem like just a business partner to me. But fine, suit yourself. Just don't expect me to clean up the mess if things get ugly. At the Lawson mansion, Tristan had lunch with Juliana and Charles. Juliana, I've agreed to the engagement cancellation that Miss Murray requested. If you have no objections, I'll have the media make it public, Tristan stated. Juliana's expression froze in shock. What? She muttered. Charles shot up from his seat, disbelief written all over his face. Uncle Tristan, I disagree. Vivi and I love each other. Sit down. Mind your manners, Juliana snapped. Charles clenched his jaw but obeyed, sitting reluctantly. Juliana turned to Tristan, her voice firm. You're being reckless. Sylvia still holds a percentage of the Lawson Group's shares. What if? Miss Murray has agreed to give them up, Tristan interrupted smoothly, sliding a document toward her. Since we exchanged property for the shares, they will be redistributed according to everyone's existing proportions. Juliana's eyes flickered as she scanned the papers. Damn it. Tristan beat me to it. I wanted Sylvia to marry into the Lawson family so we could take her shares gradually. But Tristan cut straight through the issue. A forced smile curled on her lips. You certainly know how to keep things fair, Tristan. What exactly did you offer her in exchange? Cloud Old Street on Bright Road, in the Old City. Charles' face turned red with frustration. Uncle Tristan, that's unfair. That old street isn't even worth 10% of those shares. You tricked Sylvia. Tristan calmly set down his chopsticks and met his nephew's gaze. Oh? Then what do you think would have been a fair trade? Charles hesitated before speaking with determination. I'll give my shares to Vivi. Charles. Juliana's voice was sharp with anger. If you leave, you'll never be able to come back. Charles clenched his fists. Mom. Juliana's temper flared. Are you out of your mind? Do you know how important those shares are to our family? You're willing to throw them away for a woman. She reached over and poked his forehead in frustration. Do you realize your uncle will laugh at you? She scolded. He never does anything right. Her gaze shifted back to Tristan, her eyes sharp. Even if he holds the majority of the shares, Charles and I can still align with other shareholders. When the time comes, we'll take back control of the Lawson Group. Just wait and see. Meanwhile, at the Murray apartment, Vivi tapped a wine bottle with her fork, excitement clear in her voice. Dad. Mom. I have great news. Vivi, you look overjoyed. What is it? Her mother asked with a smile. Evelyn, seated nearby, watched her warily. Vivi beamed as she held up a stack of documents. Look. I now own all the properties on Cloud Old Street. I can be a landlady now. Her father's jaw dropped. Vivi. The entire street? How did you get this? Evelyn's eyes widened in disbelief. Sylvia owns all the buildings on a street. Did Charles give them to her? She bit her finger, remembering his last words before leaving her. Vivi's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. It was a gift from the Lawson family for saving Charles when we were kids. Mr. Lawson signed the transfer today. Evelyn's brows furrowed. Mr. Lawson? You mean Charles' uncle? Why is the Lawson family always so generous with her? Her hands curled into fists in her lap, her nails pressing into the fabric of her dress. Why won't she just disappear already? Vivi's mother noticed the shift in Evelyn's expression and narrowed her eyes. Evelyn, what's wrong? You don't look happy. Evelyn forced a smile. Nothing. Just surprised. The Lawson family is quite generous. As her father read through the contract, he paused. Vivi, isn't this unnecessary since you're about to become part of their family? Vivi took a steadying breath before dropping the final news. Dad, Mom, I've broken off the engagement with Charles. Silence filled the room. What? They exclaimed, stunned. Vivi hugged her father from behind. Dad, I've told you about this. Charles and I are both adults. We can handle our relationship ourselves. Her father furrowed his brows, still struggling to accept her choice. Vivi, you should reconsider. Charles comes from a wealthy family. You grew up with him and know him well. If you let this go, you may never find someone as good as him, her mother said tensely. Vivi sighed, shaking her head. It's because I know him well that I don't want to be with him. Her mother reached out, placing a hand on hers, worry evident in her gaze. Mom, I know you mean well, but you can't force this marriage. I don't love Charles, and I won't be happy with him. Dad, Mom, you've always wanted me to be happy, right? I hope you'll support my decision. Her father exhaled deeply. Alas. Never mind. You've grown up. You should decide for yourself. If this is what you want, we'll respect it. A soft smile spread across Vivi's lips. Thank you, Dad. The weight on her shoulders finally lifted. It was over. Dad, Mom, once I finish the property transfer formalities, let's take a vacation in Europe. Mom, you can have a good rest. Her mother's eyes lit up with joy. Vivi, I'll support whatever you choose to do. Raising their glasses, they toasted to a fresh start. To Vivi's new life. After dinner, as Vivi cleared the table, Evelyn slipped out of the dining room to make a call, her voice hushed. I have something important to tell you. Okay. I'll be there tomorrow. The next day, she met a group of men in a shady warehouse. The building's on an entire street. You can ask her for as much money as you want. As long as you take a video and threaten her, she'll comply without resistance. Evelyn said excitedly. One of the men leaned back, crossing his arms. Easy for you to say. Do you think kidnapping is as easy as buying groceries? Yoda, their leader, adjusted his glasses. Miss Lloyd, we can do that for you, but you need to give us something in return. Bring your sister here, and we'll handle the rest. Evelyn took a step back, nervous. This place is too remote. I can't trick her into coming here. Then knock her out and bring her yourself. I'll cover for you, she said hesitantly, her mind racing. How am I supposed to lure her to a place with no buses or traffic? Yoda sneered. You just want to talk instead of getting your hands dirty, don't you? Do you actually want to work with us? He grabbed her chin, making her tense up. Of course I do. I've helped you twice already, she pouted. Helped us? You sabotaged Zook, left him disabled, and made us run around twice without getting a cent. He pushed her lightly, and she stumbled back, hitting the wall. I'll let the past slide, but now I need a straight answer. Will you bring her or not? Evelyn swallowed hard. All right. I'll think of a way to lure her here. But if she falls for it, I want a share of the money. She had to agree for now, then find a way to escape later. Yoda smirked. Boys, Miss Lloyd has taught you how to handle stubborn girls. You all remember what to do, right? Give her a special lesson. Evelyn's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Her voice shook as she noticed their unsettling gazes. Yoda licked his lips. Since you're such a good teacher, why don't you show us how? Her heart pounded. Stay away. Let me go. A sharp slap echoed through the warehouse. Damn. How dare you slap me? Keep resisting, and things will only get worse. She trembled, her voice breaking. Please. Let me go. Another man sneered. Screaming won't help, Miss Lloyd. No one's around to hear you. Dark laughter filled the air. Don't worry. We'll be gentle. Evelyn realized, far too late, that she had become the prey in her own twisted game. Unbeknownst to them, a drone hovered outside, capturing everything on video. In a bar, Tristan and Detective Lowe watched the disturbing video on Lowe's phone. Tristan remained silent, arms crossed, observing the detective. "Are you just going to watch when she's pushed inside?" he asked. Lowe smirked. No. I've already called the police. I'm a law-abiding man, after all. But if I stick around to explain why I was there, it'll drag you all down with me. So, I left after making the call, he said, swirling his glass. From my understanding of Miss Lloyd, he mused, after this mess, she won't back down. Instead, she'll shift the blame onto her sister. Tristan pondered his words. Lowe slid a document across the table. "Mr. Lawson, how about an additional service? I can ensure Miss Murray's safety in every aspect, an exclusive offer for VIP clients like you." Tristan narrowed his eyes before signing the contract. "Mr. Lowe, I respect your business sense, but Miss Murray's safety is non-negotiable. If anything happens to her, you won't be able to bear the consequences." Lowe gave a reassuring smile. "No need to worry, Mr. Lawson. Leave her safety to me." Tristan stood, adjusting his suit. "Show this video to Miss Murray and tell her to speak with her parents. She needs to remove Evelyn from their lives as soon as possible. Omit the latter half, she might start feeling sorry for Evelyn. And send Evelyn a warning, if she doesn't stop, the video will be released." Lowe's smile tensed as he processed Tristan's words. Mr. Lawson is ruthless. I can't afford to cross him, he thought. "Understood," he said with a nod. Meanwhile, on the streets, Evelyn walked slowly, her body trembling. Tears streamed down her face. "Why is this happening to me?" she whispered, her voice cracking. She remembered lying on the cold floor, covered in bruises. One of the thugs had laughed cruelly. "Miss Lloyd, you must have enjoyed our hospitality, right?" They had mocked her while recording everything. Her stomach twisted. "You'll pay for this," she sobbed, shame burning her cheeks. Yoda crouched beside her, his breath rancid. "Miss Lloyd, as long as you cooperate, the video stays buried. You have my word. Don't you want to see your sister suffer?" Before she could respond, a shout came from outside. "Boss! The police are here." "What?" "Run!" Yoda barked. The men scattered in a frenzy. But before leaving, Yoda turned back, his eyes cold. "We're watching you. Don't even think about betraying us." Evelyn watched them disappear, her breath shaky. She gritted her teeth. "This is their fault. They dragged me into this." Her fury turned outward. "Henry, you hypocrite. You rushed to find a lawyer for Sylvia, but where were you when I needed help?" she screamed, her voice raw. Her thoughts spiraled. "Queenie dotes on Sylvia like a princess, but she always found excuses to keep me busy. Sylvia is her perfect daughter, but what about me? I was nothing more than a free servant." Her fists clenched. "And Sylvia, she has it all, a loving family, parents, even Charles' love. Why does she get everything good while I suffer?" Bitterness twisted her expression. "It's not fair. She needs to understand what hell feels like. I'll make sure she suffers just like I did." A sinister smile crept onto her lips. "Sylvia, your parents will despise you once you're disgraced. Charles will never look at you again. Your perfect life will shatter." Consumed by rage and jealousy, Evelyn plotted her next move, the last remnants of her conscience slipping away. Far from the chaos, Vivi sat in her office, reviewing a stack of documents. "Everything is in order," she murmured. "Time to register the real estate company." Just then, her phone rang. Vivi trembled as she watched the video on Lowe's phone. Detective Lowe leaned forward, his expression serious. "Miss Murray, I think you should talk to your parents and get your sister out of your home. She's a danger to you." Vivi's breath hitched as she watched Evelyn instruct Yoda on how to blackmail her. Clenching her fists, she barely held back her frustration. "Detective Lowe, can we put them in jail with this video?" Lowe sighed, shaking his head. "I understand you're angry and worried, but one video isn't enough. We can arrest the thugs if we gather a full recording of their crimes. But as for your sister, Miss Lloyd insists she was just playing a game, so there's not enough for the police to act on. The court needs solid evidence for a conviction. Don't worry, I'll handle this." Vivi's eyes hardened. I get what you're saying, but I have an idea to make them expose themselves. Later that day, at an upscale boutique, Mrs. Murray and Evelyn stepped out as a salesperson bid them farewell. Mrs. Murray, we'll notify you when the new collection arrives next month, the salesperson said with a smile. All right, thank you. Mrs. Murray replied cheerfully before turning to Evelyn. Evelyn, you went out of your way to pick a gift for Sylvia. I was touched. Vivi has been in a bad mood lately, and I worried you might still be upset after your argument. Evelyn maintained a pleasant expression. She'll like me more if I act considerate. Mom, Sylvia is talented enough to start her own company. I'm happy for her. We're family, arguments don't matter, she said with a smile. That's so sweet of you, Mrs. Murray said, linking arms with her. You're about to graduate. Is there anything you want as a gift? Evelyn's expression flickered for a moment before she quickly masked her feelings. Sylvia always gets the best, while I only get the leftovers. How convenient. Feigning humility, she shook her head. No need, Mom. Just stay healthy. Mrs. Murray smiled warmly. Now that I've chosen Sylvia's gift, we should head home. Evelyn's heart pounded as she realized the moment had come. Call Vivi and ask her to pick us up. She and your father took all the cars, Mrs. Murray said with a chuckle. No. Evelyn blurted out before catching herself. Mom, don't you remember? This is a surprise for Sylvia. If Vivi picks us up, she'll see the gift, and it won't be a surprise anymore. She quickly pulled out her phone. I'll book an Uber. It won't take long. Mrs. Murray sighed. All right. Evelyn discreetly texted Yoda to proceed with the plan. Then she added, Mom, a friend of mine is nearby and wants to see me. How about you take the cab alone? The plate number ends in 0675. Mrs. Murray nodded. All right, dear. Don't keep him waiting. As the cab pulled up, Evelyn stepped aside and watched. The door flung open, and one of Yoda's men pressed a drugged handkerchief to Mrs. Murray's face before shoving her into the vehicle. As they drove, the men quickly realized the mistake. What the hell? One of them yelled. This isn't the girl from last time. It's an old lady. Yoda gritted his teeth and called Evelyn. Evelyn, are you messing with us? Who is this woman? Evelyn swallowed hard, steadying herself before speaking. Calm down. I'll explain. Minutes later, a car pulled up beside her. Yoda rolled down the window. Get in. Evelyn hesitated before stepping inside. Yoda narrowed his eyes. Evelyn. Who is she? Evelyn took a deep breath. She's Sylvia's mother. If you want to lure Sylvia out, this is how. She forced a smile. The men exchanged stunned glances. Her mother? Isn't she your mother too? One of them sneered. You're really willing to use your own mother? Yoda's gaze darkened. Who gave you permission to change the plan? The more people involved, the riskier it gets. His sharp stare made Evelyn tense. One of his men gripped her shoulder. My boss asked you a question. Do you understand? Evelyn trembled but forced herself to nod. I understand. Inside, panic churned in her stomach. I can't cry. It'll only make things worse. Yoda smirked. Good. I don't care how you do it, but I want your sister here in an hour. Evelyn swallowed hard and quickly grabbed her phone to text Vivi. In her office, Vivi let out a sigh of relief as she finally finished processing all the contracts. With everything settled, she could start collecting rent next month. For once, it felt like things were finally falling into place. It's a good day today, she muttered, stretching her arms after the exhausting paperwork. Just as she was about to relax, her phone buzzed urgently. Her eyes widened when she saw the message. Mom. The text read. Miss Murray, your mother asked me to contact you. She was in a car accident at the intersection of Sunshine Avenue and Yellow Ocean Road in the new town. The police have taken the driver away. She was seriously injured, and I called 911. The ambulance will be there in 30 minutes, but she needs her family with her. Vivi's heart pounded. She grabbed her keys and ran out. She sped through the streets, barely registering the traffic lights. When she arrived at the location, she rushed toward the scene, scanning frantically. A man approached her. Did you send the message? She asked breathlessly. Thank you. My mother. Vivi's voice trailed off as unease crept over her. Something felt off. Lying on the ground wasn't her mother, it was Evelyn. Before she could react, a man pressed a knife against her side. "Miss Murray, get in the car. Or none of us are getting what we want," he said coldly. Vivi froze. "What are you looking at?" The thug's voice sharpened. "I said, get in the car." Before she could resist, he shoved her inside. As the car sped away, the thug grabbed her phone and tossed it out the window. "Can't be too careful," he muttered. Vivi's glare landed on Evelyn. "Evelyn, are you behind this? What did you do to my mother?" Evelyn smirked, casually crossing her legs. "She's fine, for now. But her future depends on you." Vivi swallowed her anger. She needed to stay calm. "Of course. You have me and my mother. What do you want?" "Money. How about 2 million? She offered with a tense smile. Detective Lowe had warned her that these thugs typically demanded hundreds of thousands per extortion. Offering 10 times that amount should do the trick. The men exchanged glances, momentarily thrown off by her offer. "This lady is generous," one of them sneered. 2 million, just like that. Evelyn scoffed. 2 million? Do you think we're beggars? The land you got from the Lawson family is worth hundreds of millions, isn't it? So they're after the property, Vivi thought. The thug next to her leaned closer. "Think you can brush us off with pocket change?" he taunted. Vivi's voice turned cold. "Real estate isn't like fruit. You can't just sell it instantly. There are formalities, banks, city hall, taxation, and commerce approvals. It's a process." "Shut up." Evelyn snapped. "If you don't get us 5 million before leaving this car, you'll regret it." Leaning in, Evelyn whispered, "Do you like the drug from last time?" Vivi's breath hitched. "It was you." Memories of helplessness, betrayal, and pain flashed through her mind. "At that time, I was broke," Vivi said, her voice steady despite the fury boiling inside her. "I couldn't even afford 50,000, let alone 5 million. So tell me, Evelyn, why are you targeting me?" The men hesitated. A flicker of doubt passed between them. "Are we being played?" one of them muttered. Another thug narrowed his eyes at Evelyn. "Wait a second. Evelyn, is this about the car accident? Are you just trying to make us cover your compensation?" Vivi asked, feigning innocence. Evelyn's face darkened. "She's trying to turn us against each other," Evelyn thought. The men gritted their teeth. "We could have gotten 3 million, easy," one of them whispered. "But now? We've done all this for nothing." Meanwhile, high above in the sky, a chopper cut through the air. Inside, Tristan watched live video footage of Vivi's abduction. "Charlie, keep tracking their latest location," Sebastian's voice came through the earpiece. Charlie's reply was calm. "Don't worry. They're not escaping."
Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive, and we'll catch you in the next episode.